started by his father, and now produces quality sheep shown all around the country. Scott also serves as a livestock judging coach at Modesto High School. Welcome, Scott. Welcome to Idaho.
Yeah, if
Coming
you're ready.
in from class 1, we'll see
giving up some size difference in terms of weight. The second one, obviously, that's our wide, powerful, thick one. And I think with her, maybe we'd like to change her through her chest floor just a little bit. She probably drops in her chest just a little bit more. There might be some age differences. Obviously, there's a weight difference. I didn't really pay attention too much to the weight. But I think in terms of the one that's going to win, just a little more quality. I think she balances just a little bit better down her top than this ewe that we have here in second. But boy, I like the width and the power that we see in this one as well. Then I think it becomes a little bit more difficult with the third place ewe. I love this one's chest floor, her front end, her underline. I really, really like that about her. The thing that maybe disappoints me, she wants to roll out her hip just a little bit, probably wants to pinch out through her dock just ever so slightly, but certainly here's a fuzzy white featured one that we like quite a bit, and I think there's a lot of future in that one as well. Certainly this one's really muscular that comes in fourth. I really like this one in terms of those traits. I'd probably like to drop this one's flank just a little bit more today. She's a little raw and harder in her design, but I like those things about her in terms of her muscle shape, really good out her hip. Just like to change that underline just a little bit. But certainly I think this one's got some future as well. The fifth place young man, I like this one, just giving up some size, some performance, probably not quite as balanced as some of the others in this particular class, but I think this one's a good one as well, and certainly let's put our hands together and congratulate these 5 exhibitors. Good job, buddy.
Coming back from Class 1, Candace Sider and Josie Nagel. Entering the ring now, we have Layne, breeding Class 2, Addie Korsman, Rylan Carver, Hayden Johnson, and Layla Dees, Addison Bromley, and Texana Schlechten.
Well, really challenging class, and let me tell you a couple things why. For me, as a breeder, you know, we're looking for sheep that are maybe a little bit harder to build and harder to make. I guess the ones that, you know, probably and I like to look at them on the move, and you notice that I walked them quite a few times. I think this one that we're going to start with, I think just is maybe a little built just a little bit better for me through her front end. I think this one's truer in terms of her condition and muscularity today. Really big backed. I love this ewe on the move. Now on the brace, I'd probably like to lift her top line just a little bit, but I think if you evaluate this one on the move, and when you handle her, she's big back, she's round cage. I really like the way that this one's put together, and I love this one on the move. Not to take anything away from any of the other ones, because I think it's relatively close. You put somebody else in here, I think it could go some different ways. And I think there's probably sheep towards the end of this that maybe could move up. But let me just tell you what I'm thinking. This one, just for me, balances a little better than the others in this particular class. Second place ewe, no doubt. Is she powerful? She's probably a little older. She's carrying a little more condition for me. I think if she gets her chest and she kind of drops that chest down just a little bit more than I would like to see, if we could peel some pounds off of her and maybe lift up that chest floor, certainly we probably win this particular class. Maybe not quite as wide and square out her hip as I see as our first place sheep in this particular class. Now, the one that's interesting is this Dorset Advantage ewe lamb. I think in terms of wide and powerful and a breeding piece, this one is pretty wild. It's just when you get her on the move, she really wants to drop her head, drop her chest. For me, if we could elevate her just a little bit more, and I'm looking in terms of a breeding piece down the road. Obviously, I kept her up here. I just don't like her front end for me today. But boy, is she wide. She is big backed. And I really, really admire that one. And sometimes those are difficult to breed into ones like that. But I think this one's got a lot of future. If we get something that's really goose-fronted and giraffe-necked, I think this one could pop out some pretty nice ones and ultimately possibly be one of the best breeding pieces that's in the class. But like I said earlier in the first class today, this is kind of the way that I like them. I kind of place them how they're kind of coming to me today, but really a nice one, I think, in this particular class. Then I think, again, it gets challenging. A lot of quality in these ewes as well. I love the blue ewe. I love her front end. I love her underline, just not nearly as wide and powerful as those three sheep that are ahead of you. I think when you see this one travel on the move, when we build them, we build animals from the ground up. This one just isn't as wide and powerful as some of the others in this particular class. But hard handling, good touching. I really like this one's pattern and design. Another one that comes, it's really hard touching. I like this sheep a lot. This one for me, I love her in her front third. I love her shape. I love her front end. For me, she gets a lot plainer out through her hip. She wants to narrow and taper out to her dock. Gets a little plainer in her muscle shape as some of the other ones that we see, but certainly a really nice ewe in her own right as well. The ewe that comes in next in this particular class, again, just doesn't balance up quite as nicely, but a really nice, I think this one's going to be a very nice brood ewe for the young lady. Let's give these exhibitors a big round of applause.
Coming back from class 2, Addie Forsman,
We're gonna we'll line them up. We'll line them up. We'll put the first on that Well, we bring them out here for the champion, and we didn't have a lot in our particular classes, but certainly some really, really nice ewes. And definitely throughout the country, you're going to see a lot of slick sheared sheep and lots of weather dams, and those are kind of the most popular that we're going to see. And these are really nice females. And I think that as we go through and we have to pick a top 3 that's out here, I think it's really, really close. And so I kind of talked them in my classes, and certainly I think there's obviously, you know, those heavier ewes obviously have some more weight and some more power. There's probably some maturity, but I don't want to take anything away from those young ewes. So I think that they're all very nice ewes. I think it's just a personal preference for me today in terms of picking balance and quality. I think all of them have lots of good things to them. You know, if we wanted to talk about the first place class winner, or the first class placing winner, that one in that first class, I think as you study her, she's super green. She's probably the youngest one. I don't know exactly ages on them, but just in terms of her maturity pattern, you know, I like her in terms of her balance, her style. Maybe if we could give her a little more center body, even though she is a little bit younger. Maybe even elevate her chest floor just a little bit more, even though she is a little bit younger. Have to kind of look them, you know, as they're going to be projected down the road. And then we have a second place ewe that we talked super massive and wide and powerful. We really like that about her. And then we have those 3 that we talked in this last class. I mean, really a nice set of females in this particular class, and certainly some width and power that we had in there. So I think it becomes difficult. I'll go out and select your champion of reserve and your 3rd overall. Let's give them a big round of applause. Put our hands together for these exhibitors. Well, as we get into the Kootenai bred and fed, kind of that's what I would call it in within the county here. I think a really nice class all the way through. I'm not sure if most of them are breeding their own or whatnot. I think we've got a pretty easy weather that starts this particular class off with, just in terms of muscle shape and balance and quality. That one wins fairly handily for me. He handles really good down his top. He's thick, he's muscular, he balances up extremely well. Second place weather in this class, I like him in terms of his touch and feel. He's got some muscle shape, just not nearly as thick and powerful, not nearly as level and square out through his hip as we see in the first place one. I really like the third place guy. I think if he was a little leveler and square out through his hip, I think he'd probably rival that second one in this particular class. But when you get your hands on him, he's just kind of giving up some power today. He's not as firm to the touch as we see in our first and second place animals, but really a nice weather that comes third in this particular class. A blue one that we like in terms of his profile. Super long bodied, really extended, just needs more power, needs more muscle shape, needs to be wider and thicker to move up in this particular class. But I like him in terms of his profile, his side view. He does balance pretty well. Just need to pull him apart, make him thicker and wider, just more powerful. Weather that comes next in line, kind of the same thing. I'd like him to touch a little bit better. He's probably a little softer, and when we get some white influence in there, he gets a little bit hard, he gets a little bit softer to the touch, not as firm and not as hard handling as some of the other ones. But this one's stout and fairly wide and powerful, just needs to balance him up and give him some more quality as well and move him up in here. Then we've got another blue one. Again, like him from the side, very long, extended, really like those things about him. But if we could just stouten him up, widen him up, give him some more power and some more muscle shape, and I think we could probably move him up in this particular class as well. Then another white influence sheep. We've got a spec one here, just as a nice market lamb. Young man's done a really good job getting him fed out. I think he's wide and powerful, just doesn't have as much quality and balance as some of the other ones that we see in this particular class. Ewe lambs that come next in line, just not as balanced as some of the other ones, probably carrying a bit more condition, especially the next one here in this particular class. But certainly in terms of structural correctness, and young lady's done a nice job getting that one fed out. Next one, the same thing. We just blow them apart, make them a little wider, give them some more quality. We could move them up in here. But let's give these individuals a big round of applause as they start to exit the ring. this particular case. I don't know if he's quite as wide and powerful and just as burly and stout as our class winner in this one, but I really do like the way that he handles. I think he touches extremely well down his top, put together. That's probably his advantage over the lamb that's in third. I like the lamb that's in third. I like him because he might actually be a little rounder bodied than our second place lamb in this particular class, but he just doesn't have as much width and power. He doesn't have as much expression over his top as that we see in our first and second place lambs. But I do like him quite a bit, probably carrying a little more condition, maybe not as firm as to the touch that I would like to see, but a really nice one. A blue one that I think on the side view, it just gets beat for me today. He wants to drop in his chest, especially when we get him on the move. I'd like to change that quite a bit about him, but in terms of being wide and powerful and pulled apart, maybe not quite right in his loin edge today as I would like to see him, but I think probably our bigger concern is when we get him on the move. I just like to change that chest floor just a little bit, maybe make him more elevated and extended. I know that's probably not the greatest thing in terms of market when we're evaluating him in terms of just if we were, just to kind of stouten them and make them wide and powerful. I think the other ones are still that way too. It's just when we get him out here, it just doesn't profile quite as nicely as I would like to see. And I think the other ones do just a little bit better job. The lamb that comes fifth in this particular class, we like him in terms of his length of body, his touch, and his handle. I would just like to give him some more flank to him. He doesn't balance quite as nicely for me as I think some of the other ones, but he's kind of deceiving because I think when you get looking at him on the side view, you probably don't think he's not nearly as wide and powerful as he truly is. But when you get over the top of him, you start to handle him, I think he changes my mind a little bit. That's why he's up as high as he is in this particular class. Just needs a balance just a little bit better. And still, I'd still like to widen him and make him more powerful at the ground especially, but nice one. And then we come into some lambs here, I think are the next place lamb, I think in terms of touch and feel and handle, I think that one does really good. He just kind of gets outpowered today, especially with this top five, because I think it's very, very good. But a really nice one. Young lady's done a nice job getting this one raised out. Skin and hide really touches very well. I'd just like to stouten him, give him some more muscle shape for him, but really nice one. A ewe lamb that comes next in line, we would talk about in terms of width and power. I think she does really well in those areas. I just like to balance her down her top, kind of tighten her up just a little bit, make her a little leveler and square out through her hip. Sometimes we get the ewe lambs, and that's what they end up doing as they get older and tend to get into the market classes, but I like this one well as well. Next young man does a nice job also, done a nice job getting this one fed out, just doesn't have as much quality, doesn't have as much muscle shape as we see in some of our other ones. Same with the ewe lamb that comes at the end in this particular class, stouten her up, give her a little more balance and muscle, we could move her up in here. Let's give these exhibitors a big round of applause and congratulate them. Good job to you.
North Idaho State Fair Princess for a Day. That's Miss Visalia Boogie.
We didn't have a lot of numbers in this division, but I think a really, really nice division. I think these 4 individuals that are out here and some of the ones that we saw in some of the classes, I think really represent a market division, kind of what we're striving for. I'm not a big individual in terms of weight. I don't necessarily really care too much about what they weigh. I'm just trying to pick them the way I see them, the best quality lambs that I can find out here, and I think that there's a couple of them that suit me extremely well. You know, as a breeder myself, I mean, that's kind of what we're trying to breed them like, and I think it's relatively close for reserve out here, but certainly I think you could probably go some different ways. But let's put our hands once again, and I'll congratulate your champion in reserve of this particular division. So you saw third will be that heavyweight, third will be the heavyweight. class to get started with the market show, the overall kind of market show. But I think we've got a lot of trade-offs in this particular class, and certainly I think there's some things that I would like to change on, especially these top three. These are the kind of lambs that maybe we're looking for in terms of being stout and powerful and wide bill, and I think relatively good balance. You know, it's too bad the young lady that's going to win this particular class, I wish this dude would show just a little better. He wants to fight her most of the time, and sometimes it's hard to get a good look. But if you get your hands on that one, that's the one that probably combines balance, muscle, and finish. I think he's the one that handles extremely good. He's really big in his rack when you go to handle that sheep. Sure, he's probably a little drier than I'd like to see, and when I mean that, maybe a little harsher, maybe not quite as fresh to the touch. Maybe that's one of his downfalls. I'd probably like to fill him up just a little bit more. But in terms of his front end, the way that sheep is put together, I really, really like the way that sheep is designed. The sheep in second, no doubt, really good hided. I love his touch, but he's carrying quite a bit more condition for me than maybe I would like to see at a lower weight. Probably like to change his chest floor just a little bit, but in terms of power and width and the way that sheep handles, I really, really like that one. But if you just trimmed him up just a little bit more, give him some more elevation, man, I think that one would rival that one to win this particular class. Very nice weather to go in second. Really a nice sheep. I wish this guy would walk just a little bit better. I think he's a really, really nice sheep. I just like to make him a little rounder bodied, and when we talk about that is we talk about him coming out of his rack just a little bit rounder, a little bigger in terms of his center body width and power. We like him in terms of his muscle shape. I really like that. He's designed extremely well. Just like to pull him apart, make him a little bit wider today, but a really nice one in his own right as well. I think a next one that comes in line, this ewe lamb, just gives up some quality to our first three wethers in this particular class. I like her in terms of her width and power. She's got some muscle shape, just not as square out her hip, maybe not as elevated through her chest floor, doesn't have maybe quite as many bells and whistles as we see in our top three in this particular class. But young lady's done a really nice job with this ewe lamb. Next individual, wether, kind of the same thing. If we could give him some more muscle shape, make him just a little better balanced out through his hip, a little bit more, maybe stouten him just a little bit. But I think he's nice. He's got some width. He's got some muscle shape. He's done good in terms of his condition, just maybe not quite as much balance and quality as some of the ones that are in this upper part of this particular class. But a nice wether in his own right. Like a wether that comes next in line, I love this guy in terms of his front end and his length of body. Really like his profile and design. Just have to make him wider, make him more powerful, give him some more muscle and width, and I think we could move him up in this particular class. Ewe lamb that comes next in line, I like her, just kind of gets out worse today. Maybe not as much width and power as we see in some of our other individuals, but a nice one in her own right. Just like to give that one a notch more muscularity and power. Next one that comes in line, we like him in terms of his hip shape and his design. I just like to balance him up a little bit, tighten him, firm him in terms of his touch and feel and handle today, and we could probably move him up. Ewe lamb that comes next in this particular class just need a notch more muscle shape and power and width and balance to move that one up in here. But the young man's done a really nice job getting this one fed out. Let's put our hands together once again and congratulate these individuals. Good job, buddy.
Thank you.
Coming back from Market Land Class 1, Layne Tolman and Mary Tolman. Also participating in Class 1 was our second place average steal and gain winner, Mr. Bailey Hickerson. Coming in the ring now, we have Class 2. Addison Yoakum. Hayden Walker, Cody Tolman, Libby Huffman, Katie Steele, Addison Dronley, Charlie Jordan, and Brooklyn Fletcher. Class 2, first call, class 3.
Let's go ahead and walk them. That's good. Put him ring that one. Go ahead and bring this one. Let's go ahead and bring that one. stands out. I think in terms of this guy's front third, boy, I don't know if we could build him quite any better than that one for a weather. I mean, he handles extremely well. Really, really like him in terms of his underline and the way that guy kind of sets in, and certainly young lady's got him presented extremely well. You know, I mean, I guess if I were to criticize him a little bit, change him out his dock just a little bit. Need to widen him and square him out there. He wants to roll out of his hip just ever so slightly. I think I'm just being critical on a pretty darn good one to win this particular class. Next one, I think it becomes a little more difficult, especially with second and third. The thing that I struggle with is I like the design. I like the power that we see in this second place weather. For me, just carrying a little more condition through that forerib. He is the rounder bodied. He's the heavier muscled. He's the wider built one. He's the stouter one, I guess, when we compare him to our third place. And I think it really comes down to muscle shape for me. Even though he's carrying more condition than I would like to see, I think in terms of his natural width and power and his true muscle shape, I think he beats the third place weather in this particular class. I like the third one. He's better conditioned than second today. Just not nearly as much rack shape and muscle shape down his top as we see, especially in our first and second one, but a really nice weather in his own right. Elam that comes next in line, love her in her front third, just doesn't have as much power, doesn't have as much stoutness as we see, doesn't have as much muscle shape as we see in those first, second, and third weathers in this particular class, but a really nice one in her own right as well. I think where she beats this one that comes in fifth today, I think just in terms of her front end and balance and the way that she kind of puts things together, especially on the move, I like that fourth one just a little bit better. But this one here is probably a little wider, maybe a little more powerful. It just doesn't have as much oomph, I guess, as some of the other ones in this particular class. I think maybe through that front end, you know, this one kind of wants to drop her front end just a little bit for me today, but a nice one in her own right. Then as we come down into some of these others that are in this particular class, they just don't balance up quite as nicely, they're not as stout, they're not as wide, they're not as powerful, they don't balance up quite as nicely as some of our others in this particular class. But very nice in their own right. The young people have done a really nice job getting them raised out. I think that they'll make nice carcasses. So congratulate them one more time. Give them a big round of applause. another really good class. I think these top two are very, very nice sheep, and hopefully you guys that are in the stands, you can kind of see what I'm looking at. Just in terms of quality, balance, muscle, tone, and touch, I think these two really do kind of surface to the top. I mean, you know, you've got lots of bells and whistles, and those are great things, but and in terms of a breeder, I mean, that helps us sell some sheep. But when we're evaluating them in terms of market lambs, it doesn't matter. These are still good ones. Even if we sheared that wool off and didn't have all that fuzz and shag on there, I think these would still be your first and second place lambs in this particular class. I think this blue one I think he really kind of puts it together for me. Just touches extremely well on his top. I mean, when you get your hands on him, he's really good. He really handles very, very good to the touch. Super fresh, very expressive, really round-bodied today. And certainly I think he puts together a lot of good things in this particular class. I don't want to take anything away from the second place wether because I really do like him. He's just not nearly as good in his loin edge as the lamb that we see that wins this particular class, but he's really nice in his own right, width and power and muscle shape as well. Maybe just not quite as fresh today as that we see in that first place lamb, but really nice one in his own right. A really nice, I mean, just a very good, solid wether that comes third in line. You know, he's really long-bodied. We like that about him. He's got some width and power. You know, today it's just those first and second ones are a little better in terms of quality. This guy gets maybe a little bit too long-bodied. You know, we like him long, but we need him proportional. And I think when you evaluate him, you kind of see him where he just gets a little bit too long, but we like him in terms of his width and power. It just doesn't have as much quality as we see in our first and second one in this particular, but nice one in his own right. Blue wether that comes next in line, I love his hip. Really big hip. I think when you get behind him, man, you really see that width and power in this guy. And really, he doesn't have all the fuzz on those feet and legs, but boy, if you really study him at the ground, he's really a stout-made sheep. Just, again, doesn't balance quite as nicely as some of our others in this particular class, but I think a really good one in his own right as well. And a ewe lamb comes next in line. Again, you know, we've kind of talked about the ewe lambs. As we see them, they tend to want to pinch and narrow out to their tail, don't have as much muscle shape as some of our wethers in this particular class, but a really nice one in her own right, very structurally correct, has some roundness to her cage and that center body that we do like, just kind of gives up some muscle shape today to some of those wethers that we see in that particular class. So good job. Next, we come into a blue wether. Again, he's stout and powerful. We like him. Just doesn't balance up quite as nicely on the side view. Wants to drop in his chest just a little more. Maybe it gets maybe not as firm to the touch as we would like to see as some of the other ones, but a really nice one. The young lady's done a nice job. Then we have a spec ewe lamb. Same thing, kind of harping on the ewe lambs today, I guess. They just don't have as much muscle shape as we see in some of the wethers. And we've got a guy that comes next. Boy, if we're in terms of a carcass contest, man, this guy's going to have a great carcass because we like him in terms of his width and power. We just need to make him a little higher quality. We've got to balance him just a little bit better. We've got to make him better through his chest and make him a little showier. I know that probably doesn't make sense when we're talking about market, but when we're out here in the show ring, some of those things are what we're looking for in terms of judges. But a nice one, he's got some muscle shape, and to make a really nice market lamb. So let's give these individuals a big round of applause once again and congratulate them. Yep. we round out with our heavyweight class. It's really a nice class. I think that these guys come together very, very good for me. I think there's some trade-offs at the upper end of this particular class. I think the guy that wins this one, he's a little fresher to the touch for me. Probably travels a little freer than our second place lamb. I think our second place guy, maybe not as fresh today as I'd like to handle him in his loin edge, and certainly his hide. Just wants to take a little shorter stride for me than maybe our class winner. Class winner, I think maybe if we were to criticize him, maybe a little on the bigger side, certainly a bigger outlined one, but I think this one balances up extremely well for a class winner, and I think this one puts together lots of good things. Not anything to take away from this guy, because he does handle really wide and powerful. Just like to freshen him up and change him on his feet and legs just a little bit today. Our third place wether that comes next in line, this one is super hard handling. Probably the cutability lamb, if we were to say that out here, that we've seen probably all day. I think just maybe a little bit too harsh today. I'd almost like to give him some more condition. I think that would appear to make him a little wider and more powerful, and probably balance just a little bit better. Just doesn't balance up quite as nicely as our first and second place class winners, our first and seconds in this particular class. But a nice one, certainly really expressive in terms of his muscle shape. The next wether that comes in line, another really nice one. Just change him through his front end a little bit. We need to elevate him just a little more. Probably give him just a notch more true muscle shape. I just don't see as much true muscle shape as we see in our top three in this particular class. The blue one that comes next in line, just not nearly as stout and powerful. Need to drop this one in its flank just a little bit to balance him up just a little bit better, make him a little wider, a little thicker as well. Wether that comes next in line, I like him in terms of his width, and he's got some muscularity, just doesn't balance up quite as good through his front end, not nearly as big hipped as I would like to see as well. A spec ewe lamb that comes next in line just doesn't have as much power and muscle as we see in some of our other ones in this particular class. Let's give these exhibitors a big round of applause and congratulate them. Good job to you.
Class 4, Lexi Piccioli and Molly Isaacson. Coming in the ring next, we have Progress Class. Progress
Okay.
Class 1.
You're not going to bring them back for the
Yes.
grand
All the
overall?
purple
Together for this champion division in the market show here. I'm not going to talk them individually. I think for me, there's probably one out here that just kind of puts together lots of good things, and I think for me, he's the one that I'm kind of looking for in terms of balance and the way that he puts together the most good things, touch and handle and feel, and then I think it becomes a little more difficult for reserve. And I think we've got some that I'd like to change each one of them in probably a few areas here and there. So I'm going to pick our champion, and then I might go back and kind of look through our seconds and our first places, and we will. I just take a little bit more time on the reserve, so bear with me. I'm just trying to evaluate them. We're not in a hurry today, and hopefully neither are you. So let's once again put our hands together. I'll go out and congratulate the champion, and then maybe work the reserves just a little bit more. I thought that champion kind of set himself apart for me. That's kind of the one that I was kind of looking for. And I don't want to take anything away from these guys because I think they're really, really nice as well. Let me just kind of talk through them briefly and kind of tell you where I'm at. Our class winner in this first class, I really, really think this is a very, very nice sheep. I would love to see that sheep at about 150 pounds. And if he would work for the young lady, I think the way that one's put together, the way he's built, it's too bad he's a little being a pill today, and certainly I'm sure the young lady would probably agree with me, but I really, really like that one, the way that one's put together. I love him in terms of his design, and look, he's just a little small for me in this lineup out here, but really a nice one. Then we come to our Class 2 winner. I love this sheep through his front third. But the one big hang up that I have in him is out his hip. I really, really want to change him out his hip. And when you're breeding them, that's a hard thing to get out. But I still like this sheep. I think in terms of how the young lady's got this one presented, man, he is 10 o'clock today, or 12 o'clock, I should say. And certainly a really, really good one from the side. Really puts together lots of good things. That's just kind of where I'm at. And so I think it's really, really close. The second place out of Class 3, I love this sheep in terms of his width and power. Handles with a tremendous amount of shape. He just, for me, I'd like to square him in his loin just a little bit. You can probably see that from the outside. Maybe he gets a little deeper in his chest floor. I don't know if that bothers me as much as, maybe I'd like to drop him in that rear flank just a little bit. And then the big guy. probably, I didn't say too much about weight, but he's probably on the spectrum of being just a little bit bigger than I would like to see. I think the young lady has done an exceptional job at keeping that big boy together, and he weighs over 180 pounds. So, but she's done a nice job. I don't know his age or anything like that, but certainly I think this one handles really well. So that's kind of where I'm at. I think it's some give and take, and so I could probably see lots of different ways. And but the one that suits me the best, that's going to be reserve, is your class 3 second place. This one will be the reserve champion in this division. Then I think again it becomes even closer, but we're going to go ahead and use the big guy as our third overall in this particular division, and then we'll follow up with our class winner out of 2. Then we'll go ahead and use the heavyweight coming in next. Then I think it gets a little more difficult because you've got one that's in class 2 that we talked about, maybe needs just to freshen that one up. So I'm going to go ahead and use our class 1, even though he's a stinker today, but congratulations. And we'll follow up with our second in this division. Let's put our hands together one more time and congratulate them.
Your
to start this particular, the progress division. Really a good one. I think even if this one was colored up black, I think this would be a really nice sheet in his own right. Certainly really made extremely well. Good through his front end, got tons of muscle shape. I think the second place weather, I don't want to take anything away from him, just maybe doesn't have as much quality as we see in that first one, but in his own right, this one's wide and powerful and certainly just not as cool as through his front end as we see in that first one, but that one's a nice one as well. Really a nice pair to start this particular class. Then I think we come into two sheep that are very different in their kind. We've got a ewe lamb that has quite a bit more muscle shape to her. You know, if you really handle that rack, it's really big and expressive. Down that one's top. I think that one's a little more elevated, a little longer bodied, maybe a little higher quality than the ewe lamb that comes next in line. Next one, I think in terms of width and power, I like that one. Just need to elevate that one through that one's front end, make it a little stouter as well. And we come into a black one here that just in terms of balance doesn't have as much balance as we see in our other ones and not nearly as much power and muscle. But let's congratulate these exhibitors and give them a big round of applause.
And your class winner,
Nice class. I think probably these first two. I think there's some trade-offs between both of them. You know, there's some things that I really, really like about this blue one that wins this particular class. I think when you look at him, especially from behind, he's so big-hipped. I think that's probably where he beats this weather that's in second. Probably a little bit through his chest floor, a little bit better than our weather that's in second, especially when we put him in motion. I think that one that's going to win this particular class. I really like him in terms of his underline and how he's probably a little bit better flanked than we see in the weather that's in second. The weather that's in second, I will be the first to tell you, he's a little bigger in his rib cage. I do like that about him. I think his center body's probably a little rounder than we see in our first place class winner, but he's not nearly as powerful out his hip and probably not quite as cool through his front end as we see in that one that wins this particular class, but a really good one in his own right. The weather that comes third in line just doesn't balance up quite as nicely. I mean, he's a nice weather, maybe just doesn't have all the bells and whistles as we see in our first and second place class winners, but really I think a nice weather. He's wide, he's powerful, maybe like to change him out through his hip just a little bit, wants to roll just ever so slightly out there. The one that comes next in line just needs to be balanced a little better, need to be a little wider, a little more powerful, a little stouter to compete with these other guys in this particular class. Well, let's give them a big round of applause and congratulate them. Good job. Really nice ones in the progress division. Wherever these sheep might end up, certainly maybe this is kind of the end because I think they could only show one in the show and or in the market class, and so sometimes they end up in these. Maybe they didn't make weight, whatever. But I think these four are really, really nice sheep, and I think out here, I think when you get them out here, it's probably pretty easy for me. I don't want to take anything away from those two, than those first and seconds out of your class one, because I think they're both very, very nice sheep. But our champion and reserve are going to come out of our second class. Let's congratulate those individuals. Give them a big round of applause. Good job to you.